Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to Off the Floor. That's our Discord server. That's $2.99 per month. If you go to the link here in the description, you will bypass that nasty Apple upcharge. $2.99 per month for the most heat, information, conversation, and consternation. That's what we're calling it now. Go to Off the Floor, 10 different channels, and our stage shows. When the team warrants it, we'll be back on those. So go to Off the Floor, $2.99 per month. You can cancel at any time. Also, check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network, includes Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com, Google Play Store, or the Apple App Store. If once you enter in Prize Picks, use the code 5 FIVE. That's FIVE. Put down $5. You get $50 to play right away. This is the daily fantasy partner of the Five Reasons Sports Network. You can play across the sports spectrum, play up to 6 players together, and again, the game is basically what it used to be, and it is legal again in the state of Florida. So check it out, prizepicks.com. Use the code 5. And now, today's episode.
Mercy. Luxurious. Heat Nation. Yeah. Mercy and Lago. Down to Biscayne. Yikes. Five on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds. Down to Biscayne. Kept the floor playing, got it all band. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, Inspire have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick, hosting and producing today, so expect some mistakes. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick in the Five Reasons Sports. I got Digital Adel. You can follow him at Digital Adel. He's our official draft guru here at Five on the Floor and the Five Reasons Sports Network. You can also catch him on the draft channel on Off the Floor and also on Playback. Go to playback.tv/5RSN and watch the Heat blow leads together. All right, we're looking forward. We're looking forward now. We're going to be mixing in some draft episodes because ultimately that's what fans are kind of looking forward to. Now, before we do and get to today's topic, which is would the Heat consider trading up if not for sort of the consensus top 2 picks in this draft? Again, provided that both of them actually come out, because that's not a guarantee right now. There's a chance that Charlotte got the number 1 pick. Maybe Cooper Flagg wouldn't want to play there, maybe stay at Duke. I mean, you could make the argument that that's the better of the 2 teams in North Carolina right now. So maybe he would want to stay there. But we're going to get into that topic. But before we do, let's go over the Heat's draft situation again, just so people understand it. There's 2 potential first-round picks for the Heat this year. One they don't have any control over, because they don't have any control over Jimmy Butler nor Steph Curry, and that's the Golden State pick, and that is top 10 protected this year. Top 10 protected. So if Golden State doesn't have one of the top 10 picks of the draft, then the Heat would get that pick, which seems very likely now since the Warriors have played very well since Jimmy went out there, and it does look like they're going to put themselves in position. So we're expecting that pick, I don't know, be in the 18 to 22 range, maybe something along those lines. The Heat also have their own pick, though, but that could end up going to Oklahoma City, and the deal with that is protected for the top 14. So we keep talking about this and whether or not they're going to make the playoffs or not, get out of the play-in. There's a chance they could lose that pick. There's a chance they could keep that pick. There's advantages both ways. If they keep the pick this year, they're going to give up an unprotected pick next year, and they lose a lot of flexibility in terms of the picks that they can trade going forward. So all of that said, before we get into what they may do, Adel, what is your preferred scenario? The Warriors scenario, obviously, they don't have any control over. I think most people prefer they just get the pick this year. It's a strong draft. They wanted the pick this year. That's why they insisted on the pick this year. With their own pick, what's a better option for them long term?
So whenever you say better option long term with their own pick, what I'm imagining is getting into, that top 5 of the draft. I mean, if you can get any of those guys in the top 5, I think that's the best case scenario. Outside of outright winning the lottery and drafting Cooper Flagg or getting Dylan Harper, the second
Right.
guy in the draft. So VJ Edgecombe would be a nice consolation prize. One of those guys, Kasper Jakachonis, any of the guys in the top 5. I think that's the best case scenario for this team.
Okay, and again, we know that this team is pivoted young at this point. At least currently, they got Bam Adebayo at 27, Tyler at 25, Jovic again injured for a bit, and there's going to be extension conversations there, but it doesn't look like it's going to trend that direction. He's 21. Ware is 20. Jaquez, what is he now? 23, I guess.
I think he's going to be 24.
It's going to be 24. So,
Yeah.
but you're talking about essentially a young core, and Davion Mitchell, who is a restricted free agent but has made an impression, is somebody that they could bring back as another player in his 20s who's a former first-round pick. All right, so let's talk about it in this sense now. The Heat have not typically traded up in drafts under Pat Riley. In fact, I can't remember them really ever doing it up. Now they haven't been up at the top of the draft very often, but the year they got Caron Butler, they sat at 10, and he dropped to them. The year they took Justice Winslow, they sat at 10, and he dropped to them. Neither of those players was supposed to be available where they got them. They sat at 5. Not that they had an option in that draft necessarily, and Dwayne dropped to them. Bosch did not. And that was really more their target initially. And you look at other trades they've made, they moved up slightly to take Norris Cole one year because they really needed a backup point guard for the Big 3 era. They ended up skipping over Jimmy Butler to take Norris Cole. And they made some second round move ups, like for example, trading 3 second round picks to take KZ Okpala, which was a Riley special, and that didn't work out. So this is not something that they commonly do. So what we're suggesting here is not a Heat trademark by any means. I know that in earlier years, slightly different people working with Pat, they did look at moving up. I think one year to take Lamar Odom, one year to take Darius Miles. PJ Brown was kind of used as bait in those situations. Those trades never ended up happening. Is this draft strong enough that if the Heat had, say, I don't know, what are we saying here? They had pick 12 and pick 20, okay, that it would be worth packaging those 2 picks to go get 5, per se?
In my opinion, yes. Now, what started me on this journey to kind of look at the draft in this view is when you look at like the NFL, for example, teams have like a grading scale of trading up costs this much capital, trading down costs get you this many picks or this much capital. In the NBA, looking at it, it's a lot more loose. It's a lot more, hey, we need this. We think this is our guy. We'll give you this. There's not like a pattern or really a chart, so to speak, whenever I look through this data as capital. I went back and I was taking a look at, in 2024, the T-Wolves traded to number 8 with the, Spurs to get Dillingham. It cost a 2031 unprotected first and a pick swap. And they didn't go very far. It was only a few spots. And the same thing if you go back to 2023, also in that draft, the Wizards gave up 2 seconds and a pick swap to move up to get Bilal Coulibaly, and they took Jarris Walker. So they only went up 2 spots and it cost them 2 second-round picks. So if you're talking about moving 12 and 20 to get up into like the 5th spot, that's going to take maybe a young guy and definitely one of your first-round picks to do it. In this draft, I think it's absolutely worth it with these 5 that are out there. Even like a Con Knipple, right? Like he's going to be a kid that people are going to look at his profile and because of like Tyler, they're going to be like, you're giving up this to get this guy. But let me tell you, this kid's a stud. There's some absolute gems in this draft. Trey Johnson as well. I mean, if he doesn't go 4th overall, he'd be a great guy to get at 5 or 6. He's Heat culture all the way. This guy's work ethic, the coaches talk about they have to hold him back. So in my opinion, the way in the direction this franchise is headed and you need a leading guy, I think this draft is as good as any to find one. 2026 is, supposed to be great as well. But, I always say, a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush, as they say. I'd take what I know now than waiting on those projections.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the NFL analogy when you're talking about going for it now, because Jimmy Johnson had a philosophy, and he basically came up with a lot of those draft point rules and all that stuff that is followed there. And Jimmy had a philosophy that you make the trade. In other words, like I remember when he went up to get Pat Surtain in the second round, it's worth around a year. So in other words, in the NFL, in his view at the time, you traded a first round pick to get into the second round this year to get the player, because you get use of the player for one more year. Now, there are also the other factors that the player gets closer to his extension, and there's other financial issues at play. But typically, you want to get the player more immediately. And I would think that the Heat would want to get a player in with this core now as it's building to kind of figure out what they have. They also got some decisions to make this summer. I mentioned Jovic. I mentioned the hero extension. Well, I didn't mention it, but the hero extension is coming up. So these are all things, and it depends on what kind of player that you get. I want to pivot back to that in a second, and after the break, we'll get into it more. But let me ask you this question. I have always believed in taking the best player available. I do not believe typically in taking a player based on position need in this league, unless two guys are just so similar and you're like, okay, I need this more, right? Like, so this year, where they needed another young big, it was time to stop cycling through the the Dwayne Dedmans and all the other guys, the Cody Zellers, etc. That Mark the Thomas Bryant, they needed to go get a foundational big to play with Bam, and they believe they found one. We'll see. Okay, there's been signs of it this year. You talked about some of the concerns with him before the draft. Some of those have been alleviated a little bit, but there's still a lot of work to be done here. Okay, but I always go back to the 2003 draft. And there were some very loud people, including someone I consider to be a mentor to me, Dan Le Batard, who wrote columns on the night of the draft. Why are you doing this and taking Dwayne Wade when you have Eddie Jones? I wrote the opposite. It's pretty much the only good take I've ever had over the course of my career. I'm going to stand on it because it's the most important take in Heat history. They took Dwayne Wade and they figured out what to do with Eddie Jones. Okay, they first they played Dwayne at the point and let Eddie play the two, and then eventually they moved Dwayne to the two, and next year, and then moved Eddie to three, and then they moved Eddie out. And that's kind of the way that these things happen. The best player tends to play and emerge. So let me ask you this question: is this a need draft, or is there enough at every position that the Heat may need? We know they need an attacking guard. They need somebody who can create off the dribble, get in the paint, and finish. We know that. They need right. Scoring, and they also probably need, depending on what happens with Wiggins long term, maybe it's not as big a need, but I felt that they needed another 3-and-D type wing with a little bit more upside. Is this a draft that you can get anything, basically?
This is a draft you can get anything, any way you want it, man. I mean, if you want a guard that can attack, he can eventually be a great point of attack defender. Real quick, let me preface, this draft is incredibly young. Like, it's majority freshman based, very few older players ready to play right away, only like a Cam Jones, but that's like late first. That's not even, high like we're talking about. Game changers, maybe like a Jeremiah Fears, LeBaron and Phylon, those are point guards. They can defend, they can, facilitate, they can attack. They have shooting ability. Their shooting isn't great, though. Their three-point shooting specifically isn't great. However, again, like a Con Knipple, for example, his shooting at the rim, he's shooting. I was putting in stats the other day on my draft guide. Con Knipple shooting 90% from the free throw line, 40% from three, and like 50% from the field. Like, he's unbelievable in terms of his, and he's on Duke with Cooper Flagg, who's getting all the shine. I mean, rightfully so, by the way. But Con Knipple is no joke. And then Trey Johnson, who's a freshman leading the SEC in scoring at over 20 a game. He's a guy that can absolutely just shoot the ball from the outside. Again, almost 40% from three, 88% from the free throw line, all that. And there's more facilitating chops with him. There's guys like Rasheer Fleming. That's your 3-and-D wing right there, Rasheer Fleming. He would be that type of guy. Cam Jones, who can play off ball later in the first round. If you need another backup big, best player available, Thomas Sorber, if he's sitting there at like 9, 10, somewhere around there, you can get him. There's all kind of players any way that you want in this draft.
All right, we're going to get to more of this on the other side of this. I want you to think about this question. How many franchise guys are there here? How many franchise guys? I want you to name them, because that plays into whether or not you move up to try to get one. Before we do, I want to mention a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, our friends over at Water Cleanup. You can find them at WCUFL.com. That's WCUFL.com. South Florida, we know the floods are coming. Do you live in downtown Fort Lauderdale, man? Like where I do, it's like 3 drops of rain and nobody can go anywhere. So go to Water Cleanup in Florida. I let my building take care of it here, but if you actually own a place, yeah, take care of it yourself. Reach out to our friends, Michael Robert, his whole team in Boca Raton. They service the entire Tri-County area, all the way down to, they go all the way down to Monroe. Actually, they've gone out to Fort Myers. They'll go pretty much anywhere for you. After the storms, they're the best. And if they can't do the job, they'll let you know. I always say they got over 100 5-star reviews on Google. I've been corrected. It's now over 200. So check it out. These guys are the best at what they do. They're also huge Heat fans. Greg and I are in a fantasy basketball league with them. We stopped checking about 2 months ago. We're sorry, guys. Team just went down, but I think they just dropped Terry Rozier for us. Check it out, WCUFL.com. That's WCUFL.com. At Water Cleanup of Florida, if you've got the schmutz, they got the guts. All right, so answer this question because this gets into whether or not you trade up. How many franchise players are there? And by franchise player, I mean a player that if you have him as your best player, you feel you can contend.
All right, so let's preface it this way, though. A franchise guy that they can develop into. Because not all these guys are Cooper Flagg, right? Like Cooper Flagg's a guy that, I mean, he ended up going to college when he was 17. Like he reclassified. He's super young. He's putting up the best numbers in college basketball across the board in like every category. So not everybody's Cooper Flagg. But can they be a franchise guy? Yes, they can develop into that. Like a Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe, Kasper Jakachonis, Trey Johnson. Those guys could develop to be franchise type guys. So that's what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 out of, and that's not counting Cooper Flagg. So I'd say 5 of those guys could be potentially franchise guys. They have a high probability of being that.
All right, now let me ask you this before this draft, because I know you were a little higher on this draft than some people were, and it's looked okay. I mean, you obviously liked Castle quite a bit. Jerry McCain had popped before he got hurt. We've Dalton Connect before they got traded and then untraded has had moments. We mentioned Ware has had moments. The kid in Utah is playing a lot better now. The kid in Chicago is playing pretty well now. Coming into this draft, how many players did you think were potential franchise players? Like the same categorization you're giving to 6
for the 2024 draft?
0, right?
Well, just Steph Castle. Steph Castle was the only guy I thought that had a chance to be a franchise type of player. He was the number 1 guy on my big board. But outside of that, no, there were none. Outside of Castle. And everybody that we were looking at in that draft, they were like good number 2s or high level contributors, things like that.
Rotation players, maybe a little bit more. I mean, Richard, Sar, who we just saw recently. Like you can see, there's elements to their game that can make them effective NBA players, but I'm not seeing build around.
Well, even Reed Shepherd, right? Like in Houston, that team is so good. He hasn't had really an opportunity.
Right.
He got his opportunity the other night, and he put up like 25, 8 and 8 or something crazy.
And he had a great summer league. And my guy Sedano thought he was going to be rookie of the year, but they're just too loaded out there. Okay, so under that, now let's get to the last part of this. And again, we'll do more episodes on this as we go forward. Follow Adel's work at Digital Adel. You said it may require trading a young piece to move up, okay, which I agree with you based on the history. So let's ask this question. You're talking about young pieces. I'm assuming we're not talking about including Bam or Tyler Hero, right? No, okay. So we are talking essentially about Kel'el Ware, Nikola Jovic, and Jaime Jaquez, right? Like not the Keyshawn Johnson, the guys who haven't had a chance to really prove themselves yet at this stage. We're talking about those 3. Would you be inclined, if I again, let me pose the same question. Let's say you can get up there. I don't expect this to be available to them, but let's say there's a team that they're at 6, okay? And the Heat have, as we said, something in the 12 and 20 range, 2 picks to package. Would you include to get one of those 6 that you think could be franchise, leading type players? Would you include Ware, Jovic, or Jaquez to do it?
Okay, so Ware's a different conversation Jaquez and Jovic, yes. There's not even a conversation. The reason why Ware is a different conversation is because unless you're acquiring another pick to take another big, you don't subtract that he solved an issue. Regardless of how much further he develops, that size, length, and athleticism serves a purpose in this build. So unless you're going to replace that, you can't really trade Ware.
Okay, I'm with you on that. I would agree with that. I think of the three, I think most Heat fans are at that point. I mean, I order them Ware, Jovic, and then Jaquez. That's where I'm at with it. I kind of felt that way before this season. This season emphasized it to me, but Jovic's constant unavailability, which a lot of this has been freak stuff, but that concerns me somewhat. But I just think that he's still further from his ceiling than Jaime would be. So if we're talking about, again, let's just pose it. You got 6 guys, okay? Tell me who the 6th is there. We don't know what teams are there right now, but just you got 6. Obviously, Cooper Flag, let's say he comes out, he's off the board. Bailey's off the board, right? Harper's off the board. Okay, give me 2 more that are off the board. Who the 6 is, and let's actually.
So VJ Edgecombe would be off the board, and Casper Jakachonis would also be off the board.
And so who's the 6th there?
The 6th there is Trey Johnson.
Okay, so Trey Johnson is there. You have 12, 20, and Jaime. You don't even think about it.
Don't even think about it. Turn it in.
Okay.
I mean, let me put it to you this way. But like I said, at Texas, as a freshman, to lead there's only 4 guys that have ever led the ACC in scoring, of the SEC in scoring as a freshman. Right. Only 4. He's doing it, and he's the leader of the team. Like, everybody turns to him to lead the team, and his coaches have to stop him from working too hard. He comes to pregame 2 hours early. He's a Heat guy.
Well, that's what Jimmy does at Golden State. He didn't do with the Heat this season. All right, Adel, we appreciate it. I needed to get you on the record there, because if that scenario holds, we'll be going straight to you. Again, follow his coverage. We'll be mixing in more draft coverage, more historical coverage, more coverage of anything except blowing 14-point leads, because Terry plays the entire fourth quarter. Have a good one, everyone.
See you.